Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's episode of the FNM Spotlight. It is standard at our local game store, so I'm going to be playing a See the Unwritten deck. Many of you may know I was featured in an article over at Wizards of the Coast main site, the MagicTheGathering.com. They asked me what card I felt had the most potential from Khans of Tarkir, but didn't really see much standard play. And I chose See the Unwritten for that card, and you can go check that article out. I'll put the link in the description below. But I think I had some pretty solid reasoning to why See the Unwritten didn't see a lot of play or much play at all. I think it saw some in Mono Green Devotion, and then after that, all the Eldrazi from Zendikar wanted to be cast. But now we've got a few Eldrazi's from the Oath that I think are pretty good in See the Unwritten because A, they're not bad to get off of a See the Unwritten. They have a reasonable body. And B, they actually enable See the Unwritten. So I think that that's the best way to build around See the Unwritten. So let's just start off with the deck tech. Everything in this deck wants to have 4 power for See the Unwritten and also wants to come out a little bit early. So Siege Rhino, of course, is the obvious choice. So that means we're into Abzan. We're going to run a 1 of Anafenza. It shuts down a lot of the rally decks. And we're also going to run a 1 of Linvala, the Preserver, and a few in the sideboard. I just think Linvala is pretty neat of a card. I've played this, a similar version of this, just trying to ramp out Linvala, and the 5 life and a 3/3 Angel is very significant in this format. Since this format does seem to be like a Crackling Doom 1-for-1 type format, if you can resolve Linvala, it can get you right back in the game. And so we have 2 in the sideboard, 1 in the main board from Linvala. Then we're going to run Thought-Knot Seers as well as Reality Smashers. They're just very, very, even if you can't cheat them out with Eldrazi Temples and Ayavugans like you can in Modern, they are, I mean, a 4/4 for 4 that gets rid of a card, and a 5/5 for 5 that has Trample of Haste, which if they target it, they have to discard a card, I think is amazing. So everything in this deck has value. Thought-Knot Seer is going to get a card. Siege Rhino is going to get you 3 life. Reality Smasher is going to have haste and trample, and hopefully, if it's not Crackling Doom, they're going to have to discard a card to actually target it. Surrak is going to give something haste. Anafenza is going to exile cards when they go to the graveyard, and so it's just everything has so much value out of this deck. So how are we going to get up to See the Unwritten? Whisper of the Wilds is the best card for this. Radiclaw Mystic is kind of a close second. I chose Whisper of the Wilds because we don't need blue or red, and so there's no really advantage over the mana from Radiclaw, so you have to decide what is better, the Ferocious or the ability to morph it in and unmorph it for excess mana. But I felt that Whisper of the Wilds is just the Ferocious off this card is very significant, as we can turn 3 Thought-Knot Seer if we have a Wastes or a Siege Rhino if we have the right lands off a Whisper of the Wilds, and then turn 4 the Ferocious will be enabled from the Whisper of the Wilds, and then you can do a See the Unwritten as soon as turn 4, as you will have your 4 lands and the 2 mana from Whisper. The other way is through Explosive Vegetation. Hopefully, again, we go Whisper of the Wilds into Explosive Vegetation. That will find us some more lands, and then we can still See the Unwritten. Very, very fast See the Unwritten. And occasionally you'll have to use See the Unwritten without a creature out. It tutors up quite a bit of cards, or at least allows you to look through 8 of your cards to find an answer. And so with this deck, even though we're not going to find like an Atarka or some just huge finisher, we still do have cards like Siege Rhino or Thought-Knot Seer or the like. So I don't know. I thought about just throwing in like a 1 of Dragonlord Ojutai because it wouldn't be too hard to splash into blue. But then you will really want to go into Radiclaw Mystic, and then it's white-blue. I don't know. That's still an option with this deck because it's not hard to add a 3rd color or a 4th color because of the ability through the fetch lands into the battle lands. But for the mana base for this deck, we're running 4 Windswept Heaths and 2 Evolving Wilds as our fetch lands. And this allows us with the Evolving Wilds to find the 2 of Wastes is all we're running, as well as they can find a basic land. And the Explosive Vegetation can also find an Evolving Wilds. And then we're going to run 4 Caves and 4 Llanowar Wastes. These are kind of like our tricolor land in this deck because they can add colorless mana. So we have 10 main lands right off the bat that can grab or that can add colorless mana, and we have 2 more Evolving Wilds that can go get Wastes, and then 4 Explosive Vegetation. So it shouldn't be a problem to cast the Reality Smasher or the Thought-Knot Seer on time. Some other cards in here are Sylvan Advocate. The card is just too good not to run, especially in a See the Unwritten deck, because once you have 6 lands, See the Unwritten is actually online with Sylvan Advocate, as well as Whisper of the Wilds. So it's an early 2-3 that can add some pressure or play defensively. Has Vigilance, which is a very, very strong mechanic right now. And as soon as, like, if you... Late game, it's a 4-5 for 2 mana. Early game, it's a 2-3. It's good throughout the entire progression of Standard at the moment. We have 2 more Painful Truths just to help us draw cards. It was just kind of a filler slot. I thought about Rattleclaws or a few more lands here. We're running 26 lands, which I think is perfect in this deck, as we're not really trying to get anything above 6 mana. We really curve out here at the 6 slot. So onto the sideboard, we have 2 more Linvala, the Preservers. These are against the decks. These really are good, in my opinion, against other Siege Rhino-based decks to really come back. They're a 5-5. They block Siege Rhinos. They put a 3-3 Angel out a lot of the times against Abzan. 2 Murderous Cuts just as kind of flex spots. We do need to get rid of some annoying cards out of the format. Like if they have a opposing Anafenza or a Tasigur, Murderous Cuts are great for that. Dromoka's commands here are also for removal and getting a little bit of value out of the Dromoka's command. We have an Infinite Obliteration. This is just purely for the rally matchup. A Dragonlord Dromoka is another one we can bring in versus the aggro-based decks or the Abzan decks. Once this guy gets out, it's very, very hard. Hopefully they've already used all their Abzan Charms. Abzan Charms is another card we could put in this deck. I just think Painful Truth is just a little bit better because I want to be using the draw portion, but Abzan Charm is definitely another option. Then we have Kalitas, Traitor of Ghet. This card by far is the card that you want to, your go-to card against Rally. We can tutor up pretty well with See the Unwritten, so it's almost like running, 5 copies of this in the deck when we bring it in. And we have Anafenza that can take care of the Rally. And then I'm going to put 2 more Hallowed Moonlights in against Rally. So we have Infinite Obliteration, Kalitas, Anafenza, and 2 Hallowed Moonlights. So I'm thinking we're okay versus Rally. At least we have some play. And then a Tasigur, the Golden Fang. This will come in versus the very, very grindy match. The See the Unwritten is going to give it plenty of ammo. And then hopefully if it sticks, then we can start getting back cards, and everything in this deck is so value. I mean, there might be some Whisper of the Wilds we don't want to get back, but even getting back a Sylvan Advocate off of the Tasigur is huge. 1 more Painful Truth against the grindy matchups, and 2 Languishes. These are against the early token or Gideon. There's a Bant token deck going around, and Languish will be great for that. And I think that just running 2 of a lot of your cards do survive, like Linvala survives, Reality Smasher survives, and the Siege Rhino survives. So if Languishes come in, that's when you probably bring in more Linvalas and a Tasigur, and then take out a lot of the cards that do not survive to Languish. So that's just the overall deck tech. It's very similar to Abzan. Well, I guess it's not. It's quite different. We're not running much removal. I mean, this is what we call an all-in deck. This is really trying to focus on the See the Unwritten. You can do some insane stuff with this, finding like a Reality Smasher and a Siege Rhino, and that's an 8 damage swing right there a lot of times. And then they still have to deal with the Siege Rhino and the Reality Smasher. Crackling Doom by far is the card that gives us the most problems. So keep that in mind. Crackling Doom decks will be fairly hard for this deck. And the early removal through Fiery Temper can be annoying for Whisper of Wilds, but you really just want to put your opponent under a ton of pressure, and then hopefully the See the Unwritten just gets so much value, or just all the other cards in this deck just get a lot of value. I'll let you know in the comment section after the tournament is over how this deck matched up and how well it did against the variety of decks that we have at our local game store. There are a lot of Rally decks, there are a lot of Mardu Green decks, and Jeskai Black decks, so it's very typical of your regular metagame. And anywho, that article for the Mothership will also be in the link in the description below. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.